In this video, I'll go over my thoughts on using tiling window managers. I use macOS as my main operating system, and I do use a tiling window manager. But as you can see here, I use it in a different layout mode. I don't use it in a tiling mode, but instead I use it in this stack mode, which is the line you see highlighted on the screen. So what does this mode mean? Just that I keep a single app on the front at all times. If I switch to YouTube, for example, Hyper AY, that's what I press. Notice that YouTube is at the center of the screen. If I try to move it, it's gonna go back to the same position. Even if I try to make it smaller, then I let go, it's gonna go back to its full size. Let me switch back to my terminal and I'm going to show you what the tiling mode is. Just gonna comment this line and I'm going to uncomment this. I have a key map to restart yabai, which is hyper U0. That's going to restart it. And you will see that automatically everything was configured or organized as tiles. I'm just going to minimize OBS. I don't want to have it on the screen right now. And the rest of the apps occupy the entire screen. Using it like this doesn't make much sense, but you could have different apps in different workspaces. For example, I'm going to grab here wezterm and I'm going to move it to a different workspace in macOS. Just gonna drag this, move it to the very top. This shows up. I'm gonna move it to the desktop number 2. So now that application is there. I'm also going to move this other application YouTube to that workspace. Just gonna drag this to the very top, move the application there. Now I have 2 applications in this space. This makes a little bit more sense. It's almost 6 p.m. It's raining outside, so you may hear that in the video, so just in case you're wondering. So let's say that I want to switch to another app right now, another app on the other desktop. I'm gonna switch to ChatGPT. Hyper A : in my case, switches to ChatGPT. If I switch back to YouTube, it's going to switch to the other workspace. I can configure macOS so that YouTube and wezterm are always open on this desktop. How do I do that? If I come down here, I right click on this, options, assign to this desktop, because it's currently assigned to desktop 1. So if I close out of this app, I reopen it, it's going to open on desktop 1, but I don't want it to open on desktop 1, but instead on this desktop. What's this desktop number? Let's take a look. This is desktop 2. You can create more desktops and you could probably have one app on each one of the desktops, but that means that you have to organize and configure where your applications run. And something else that you have to keep in mind is that the space is very limited. Let me go back to the other desktop. Just gonna go back to ChatGPT. That automatically switches to this desktop. I have 4 apps here. This is not useful at all. What can I do with these 4 small apps on the screen? Nothing. There's not much I can see because they're pretty small. I use a single monitor on purpose, and that's because I want to be as effective on my desktop computer as on my laptop. So it doesn't matter in which computer I'm working on. If I switch to my laptop, my workflow is going to be exactly the same with the laptop screen by itself. I don't use an external monitor. Maybe there are use cases if you stream or something, could be beneficial, but not for me. I stick to one monitor all the time, and that's the way I like working. So the reasons why I don't like tiling window managers are basically 2. 1, space is very reduced. Even if I switch back to the other set of applications that I have here, I just have half of the screen for each one of the apps, and it's not enough. They're too small. Number 2, if I want to do what I did right now, I have to organize each one of the apps on different desktops. I can create multiple desktops. That's not a problem. Move the apps to their own desktop, configure them to open in that desktop. I don't want to do that. I don't want to think about those things. And number 3, well, maybe there are 3 reasons. I get distracted if I have multiple apps on the screen at once. I have 4 different applications here and I'm focusing on the 4 of them at the same time. And that distracts me a lot. I used to think that a really big screen was going to solve all my issues. So I spent like 3 years, maybe 4 years using a 52-inch TV as a monitor. I used to have a lot of different apps on the screen at once. I used to have Obsidian, Slack, my terminal, YouTube, Finder, and all of them were tiled. But it was pretty difficult for me to switch between apps. I had to use my mouse back then because I didn't use keyboard shortcuts a lot, so I had to use my eyes a lot. First, I had to find where the app was, click on it to switch to it, or use the command tab switcher a lot, and it was just not effective. But one day I was playing YouTube videos and I found this guy, the Primogen, 3 years ago. This video, my developer workflow, and he basically explains how he uses his computer, how he uses i3, tmux, vim, a lot of different things. So it opened my eyes. So I decided to try using a single monitor and having one app on the screen at a time. So I highly recommend this video. Go and check it out. Pretty sure you're gonna like it. Now that I went through the reasons on why I don't like tiling windows, let me show you what my workflow is and how I navigate. I use the keyboard a lot now. So I'm going to press Hyper AJ. That's going to bring me to my terminal. My terminal is set to transparent. This is something that my window manager does. That's why you don't see the app here on the screen, but the app is there. It's just something that I configured. I'm going to switch from this mode, which is BSP, back to my default mode. I'm just going to press U to undo the last two changes. I'm going to press Hyper UO. That restarts yabai. That's something that I configured. I'm going to bring my apps back to the other screen. I can leave them here, doesn't matter, but I'm just going to bring them back to the other screen. Let me try to drag this. Not sure if this is going to work or not. Okay, I can drag this. Now I'm going to drag this other one to the other screen. I have one single desktop right now. All of my applications are here. If I show you my apps, all of them are here, and only one application is on the front. What happens if I need to switch to my terminal? Just going to press Hyper AJ. I have my terminal on the screen right now. If I need to switch back to YouTube, I configure Control so that if I tap the Control key by itself, it's the same as if I type Command Tab. So I'm pressing Control right now by itself, and that is switching between the last two applications. Let's say that I need to switch to a different application. I need to go to ChatGPT. I'm going to press Hyper A colon. That takes me there. What if now I need to go to Finder? I'm going to press Hyper AF. That brings me to Finder. What if now I need to go back to YouTube? Hyper AY. That takes me to YouTube. And back in my terminal again with Hyper AJ. I spend most of the time in the terminal. Sometimes I switch to the browser, to YouTube, Slack, the apps that I use the most. And each one of those applications is configured with a keyboard shortcut. What if I need to switch between projects in my terminal? I use tmux and I configure Shift. So if I tap Shift by itself, it's going to take me to the alternate tmux session. I'm going to press Shift right now. Notice that it took me to this different session. I'm going to tap Shift again. It's going to take me back to the previous one. And I can just keep pressing it and it's going to switch me back between these two sessions. I don't use tmux panes too often, which is when you split your window. Sometimes I do, but only when it's strictly necessary. Besides that, I manage everything as sessions. So if I press Hyper F, that is my prefix key in tmux, then I press the letter S as in session, it's just going to show me all the different sessions that I have configured here. And I can switch to each one of them. I configured a few sessions with the letter. So to go to my home directory is H, .files latest is J, my notes is the letter U, my blog post here is the letter L, and so on. So I can switch to a session here, or I can type Hyper T U. That's going to take me to my notes. Notice that I'm here in my notes. Notice that I'm in neovim right now. I can view images in neovim. If you want to know how to view and paste images in neovim, I have this video, view and paste images in neovim. Go over it. I explain everything there in detail. If you want to fix issues with images in wezterm, I also have this other video. You should watch this video afterwards. Notice as well that I'm using wezterm. That's the terminal emulator that I'm using. I used Kitty for quite some time. I switched to wezterm a couple weeks ago maybe, and I'm loving it so far. Fonts look great, ligatures work, and it just looks sharper. It's a little bit slower than Kitty, but if you want to find out more and you want to learn how to set up wezterm properly, I have this other video. You can go also check it out. So as you can tell, now I can easily navigate between the apps that I want by using a single key press. I don't have to think about where the applications are. I don't have to use my eyes to look for the applications. I just type a key map and I get to the app that I want really fast. And that has made me very efficient and fast. And if I compare it to the way that I used to work back then using tiles, was not as efficient at all. I'm way faster right now. Notice that still in tmux, if I switch to the other session, I'm just gonna press Shift right now. I have windows here, which are basically like tabs. So I can go to the tab number 2. If I press Hyper F, I is for the number 2. Hyper F, O is for the number 3. So you can still have your tabs, we could say, in your terminal by using tmux windows. And you can also have your panes in tmux. So if I press Hyper F and the pipe symbol, it's just gonna create a pane here on the right. I don't use them too much, like I said before. What if I need to have two instances of the same app open? Let's say that I'm in my browser, for example. This is my .files. All of the configurations that I have, everything is in my .files. Go and check them out. If you like them, make sure to star them. We already passed the 128 stars. So let's say that I need to open not a new tab, but a new instance of the browser. I'm just going to press Command N. That's going to open it. And what if I need to switch between these two? I'm just going to press another key that is next to Control on my keyboard. So by just tapping a single key, I can switch between the last two instances. This is the same as if you pressed Command tilde. Notice that I'm pressing Command tilde here is doing the exact same thing, but it's easier if you just do it with a single key. So if I press that key, switches between the two instances of the application. Same with YouTube. I'm just gonna open another instance, Command N. And in this other instance, I'm in my YouTube Studio thingy. So I can switch between this one and the other one by pressing the exact same key. It's gonna switch me between the two. Let me go back to my yabai configuration. The only thing you need to do is configure stack mode in here. I have a video in which I go over how to set up yabai if you're using macOS. It's the video that is shown right here, transparent terminal with yabai in macOS. It's 9 months old. It's one of my first videos. The quality is not the best, but it's still pretty relevant. So go and check it out if you want to configure yabai the exact same way that you see on the screen right now. The last piece of the puzzle is my keyboard mappings. I use karabiner-elements. I'm going to press hyper TE. That is just a key map that I configured that opens this file in a tmux session because I open this file regularly, so I decided to have a tmux session for it. This is where I configure all my mappings. For example, to jump between apps, this is where I configure it. So if I press hyper AH, it's going to go to Spotify, hyper AJ, wezterm, Chrome, and so on. And that's not it. I have way more mappings configured. If I keep scrolling down here, you're going to see that here are my tmux sessions basically. So if instead of A, I press hyper T for tmux, and then H takes me to my home session, .files latest, this other session, other different sessions as well. I use those to navigate between my different tmux sessions. If I keep scrolling down on this file, this is to SSH to my different hosts. So for example, if I press hyper EJ, you're going to notice that it created a session with this name and it automatically SSH'd to this host. How do I go back to where I was? Remember that I just pressed shift by itself. It's going to take me to the alternate tmux session. So I can keep scrolling down here and there's way more stuff. I have another for R as in raycast. If you want to learn how I set up karabiner like this, I have a video. It's the one shown here on the screen. Again, it's one of my first videos. It's 9 months old. Gonna probably release an updated version of this video, but it's still relevant. Go and check it out. I explain everything in detail there as well. Was it easy adapting to this new workflow, which is very tmux centric and also very keyboard centric? It was not. It has its learning curve. So you're gonna probably spend a few weeks or months getting used to it, getting used to the key maps, getting used to navigating your apps, switching between applications, switching between the same instance of different applications. But if you put the time and effort, I can guarantee you that you're not gonna look back. It happened to me. Maybe we're not all the same. Maybe you hate it and you think it's not a great idea. I would like to read in the comments. What are your thoughts? What do you think about tiling windows? Do you prefer to use something in stack mode, which I guess is the default behavior of i3, having a single app on the screen, or you prefer having no window manager at all? Let me know your thoughts. I'm interested in learning new things. I hope you learned something out of this video. That's it for today. I'll see you in the next one.